Okay, we're ready to go. So we're going to call the Public Safety Committee hearing for Thursday, March the 12th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
He's excused today,
Alderwoman Davis,
and she's excused today.
Alderwoman Howard,
She's going to be running late, but she'll be here.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Boyd,
Present.
Alderman Bosley, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Narayan,
Here.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Page, Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
3 present, quorum has not been established.
Okay, and I know I saw Tom Oldenburg's picture on there, but that's okay.
I'm present. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm here.
Okay. And we're not going to do the minutes because we don't have a quorum. We're going to jump right to the police chief, the public safety director, and the fire chief. And first off, thank you guys for taking the time to come in today. We're going to go over that report. You know, they had suggestions and I don't have a whole lot of questions, so I'm going to let the committee go. I did the one question I had that I've been asked is there a chase policy, and what is that chase policy given the last the incidents over the last few days? And I don't know if you could speak to them or not. So if you want to answer that, either Director Isom or Chief, if you feel like you can. If not, I understand, and then we'll move down the list.
So, Alderman Vaccaro, the answer to your question is yes. Yes, there's a pursuit policy, and I really don't want to go too much into the investigation that about the incident that occurred. That's still under investigation.
Right.
But whenever there's a potential pursuit involved, or a belief that there's a possible pursuit, of course we would hold folks to the guidelines set forth in the policy. And that during an investigation, if we learn that there are violations of policy, we will cite those and move forward in that direction. But again, the investigation is pending. Our force investigative unit is looking into that incident, and so like I said, I can't get into the specifics, but certainly we have a policy, and we ensure that officers adhere to it, and when there are violations, of course, we take corrective action.
I understand, and I understand you can't get into that specific one. I just, the question I was asked is, do they have one? And I think, aren't all the policies online anyway, if somebody really wanted to look?
So, some of them are, Alderman. We have been working to try to get, ultimately the goal is to get all of them on there, but that is a work in progress. So we have a planning and operational, we have a planning unit, of course, and they're responsible for making sure that the orders get on there. Some of them are under revision, and so they're waiting. Some of them, in fact, some of the major ones are under revision, and they're waiting to completion before they post those. But the ultimate goal is to have all of our orders online.
Okay, cool. So I think what I'm going to do is go down the list. I know we have one speaker, Dan Clark, who is with Local 73 with the Firefighters Union. That I understand from the director they can't answer any questions because of the pending lawsuit, but certainly everyone's welcome to make a statement. And the fire chief, you're certainly welcome to respond in any way you feel appropriate. So I might get that one. Let me do that because the other is going to take more time. So let me just do that real quick. But Dan, if you want to go ahead and make the statement you want to make, and Chief, if you want to respond, Fire Chief, if you want to respond, or if you can or can't, that's fine. And then I understand from talking to Director Isom that because of pending lawsuits, they really can't reply. So, I'm not going to hold it just. But anyway, Dan Clark, if you want to go ahead and make your statements that you want to make, certainly please do that.
Yeah, first off, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, the rest of the committee, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I spoke to you guys a month or two ago, and then you guys went on spring break, so we kind of slowed down on this. But we're still sitting here. We have active lists going. We are now up. I think the last time I spoke, we had one captain waiting to be promoted to battalion chief. We had one private waiting to be promoted to captain. As it sits right now, I believe we have three captains, three privates that are writing out a title and captain's positions and permanent positions, and one captain that is writing out permanently as a battalion chief. As it sits, we have two captain spots for sure that are completely open, ready to be promoted. One battalion chief spot that's completely open. If that battalion chief's made, then that would actually open up another captain spot, making it three. Within the next month, you will add an additional 5 captain spots that will open up. These are people that have put in for retirement, are waiting to run out the rest of their H days, whatever, to actually come off the books. So then we'll be at 8 captain spots open. Again, as I spoke previously, we just had a line of duty death. We did have somebody writing out a title on that. We don't necessarily blame that, but we just, with everything that's going on in the department, our runs are going through the roof. As the police department has just come out and said that they're going to 12-hour shifts because it's so busy. We know summertime is going to be busy. The city's not slowing down any. It just seems like an awful time to short staff our supervision. So that, like I said, within about a month, we're going to be 8 captains short. We do have a current list. As I said, there is a settlement agreement that's out there that states that you can't hold up promotions until a new test is done. PSI is the testing company. I do know that they came through the city last week and started our new recruit testing program. They're doing the job analysis for that. They said when they get through with that, they'll start doing the job analysis for the captains and battalion chiefs testing. So that looks like it's moving, which is great news. We're all in favor of a new testing process. However, we're not in favor of running our short staffing, our supervision on the department until that's done. And the settle agreement clearly states all that. Now, as far as and Director Isom, I'm not sure, you said that you can't speak on this because of pending litigation. We have no pending litigation on this topic. Our attorney just sent, so the way that our union works, whether it's the president, myself being the secretary treasurer, we're full-time employees. We don't just do union activity. We work every day. So we lean on our attorney to be kind of like a business agent. So, if there's pending litigation, something on that matter, she would never speak on it. But so I'm curious what litigation we're talking about that we have, because we haven't filed anything on that. We have litigation over the Civil Service Commission going on, which is a completely separate matter. But anyway, really what we're trying to find out is, why are we holding up promotions? I mean, it's as easy as that. Nobody wants to go to litigation. Nobody wants anything. We just want to see people get promoted. We want to move this thing on. We want to get a new test going on, and we want to get more people promoted. I mean, it's like with every job, you should have that opportunity to be able to promote, to be able to, advance in your career. And that's all we're looking for.
And Director Isom, if you want to comment, you can, and I understand because we agree. I already told up front whether.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Clark's point of clarification is right. There is no pending litigation. There was a letter sent by their attorney referencing the agreement, which was agreement between local personnel and others. And so the interpretation of that agreement is something that does need to be worked out in terms of negotiations with city councilor, personnel, and other entities. So I think those negotiations need to be done between the entities and not in sort of open forum.
Well, I don't want to cut you off. Sorry, sir. I just wanted to be able to respond if you're finished.
Yeah, so I mean, you all have it, you just have an interpretation of that agreement. And I think, of course, that's your interpretation. But there may be a different interpretation of that.
No, I understand that point. The only thing that I would say to that is when that agreement was made, there was the director of personnel sitting in that room, a city councilor was sitting in there, and all the different organizations. So that was already done when that agreement was made. It was between everyone.
What we can do is at a further meeting, Dan, is I could have the personnel director and all that come into a meeting.
Yeah.
We call them into a meeting. They might be better to answer some of this, to say, gee, you know what? And Chief Jenkerson, have you seen this interpretation thing? Have you seen this agreement?
I've seen the agreement. I have not seen an interpretation.
Why don't we, I think it might be more appropriate to have the head of personnel in, and we could do that as soon as even next week. These might be questions better sent in that direction.
Yeah. And then I think also, Mr. Chair, there is also an interpretation of the authority of the public safety director as well, which there's a different interpretation of that.
I think we could do that in a meeting just with that. You know, because I know the importance, and I'm sure the fire chief would agree, the importance of getting people put in position, you know, especially at fires and stuff. I would assume, right, chief, fire chief, the importance of getting these promotions done. Or
Well, it's, you know, there's always a factor with supervisory skills on a fire scene, which is required. And it makes the ability of fire suppression and, you know, and rescue and supports the activity. It's always, you have to always have a supervisor there.
So Dan, if I wanted to at least let you make your statement. I know.
No, I appreciate it, sir. And in all honesty, I don't really feel like this is the right forum to do this. We've been trying to reach out since February 11th, I believe, to try to set up those types of meetings to actually just sit down and discuss this. Again, there is no litigation. We just want to sit down and see if we can work through this together. We don't get communication back.
Well,
That's the concern. And that's why I'm actually here, and I've been speaking to these committees because it's my only way that I can actually get the information out.
Well, here's
which is
what,
unfortunate.
Here's what I'll make this promise in a public setting. You know, why don't you try to get with and Director Isom, if you can get with Dan and them, but if you guys could set something up and try to see if you can work this out privately first, and if it's not, then we'll drag everybody into a public meeting, if that's acceptable. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and do a public meeting, but I think that maybe sometimes in a private meeting, you might be able to hash through this without the, you know, because a lot of it might come up with, well, we can't talk about this, or, you know.
I agree 100%, Mr. Chair.
And if you find that you're not getting cooperation, then call me, let me know, and we will have a public meeting. And we can do that within days of the time you call me.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and everyone, thank you for that, listening to that. And Fire Chief, that was more, if you want to make a comment, and then we're going to move on to the this safety thing. And certainly, I don't know if you're a part of that or not, but certainly you can hang in there with us or not. It's your call.
Okay, I'll just hang in here for now.
Okay. And Dan Clark, you're certainly welcome to stay or go. So I'm gonna go down this list here. There was that thing that came out that said that, you know, things that we could do differently in the city. I'm just gonna go down the list, and Alderwoman Davis is excused. I don't know that Alderwoman Howard has joined us yet. So Alderwoman Pam Boyd, I do believe you're first on the list. So you can ask all the questions you have to ask.
I don't know how I got first, but okay, I'll
Well,
deal with it.
because the vice chairman's not here, Marlene's excused.
I know.
You're- You're always first in my heart. And
Okay, I had sent Chief Hayden and Dr. Dan Iso questions because I was concerned about that CPE report. And I think the main thing I'm just so frustrated about, because it seems like everybody is trying to tell the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department what they need to do. And I just have a challenge with that, because we have people that have been the police for over 40 years on the department. And so who better can know what will work than the people that have served from the ground up? And so that's my first frustration, because we constantly have these people coming in, and a lot of people are being paid to tell us what we need to do and what's best for us. And one thing, they're not even from St. Louis. 9 times out of 10, these people are from other states or cities. And so I'm the first one to say St. Louis is unique to any city out here. I'm telling you, you can't compare us to the Chicago, to the Boston, because we're unique within ourselves. And so I sent some questions, and I'm just asking you all to kind of give me some feedback on how is that looking, or how are we doing this in regards with staffing?
Yes, ma'am, Alderwoman. I'll start, and then like I said, if you have some more detailed questions, I do have the Lieutenant Colonel Sack here with me, who the units that are primarily the most visible, which would be specialized enforcement and community policing. He's over those units, but I'll try to address your questions in a general sense, and if you have more, we can go deeper. But I think what the report basically said when it comes to staffing, the report said that what we have as a staffing outline or staffing platform is fine. They wanted to make sure, though, that specifically more people were available specifically for patrolling only responsibilities. And so, and I think one of your questions was where exactly are they? They said that you actually need to put 54 more persons on the street. Where are those people at? And I think that in a general sense, I can tell you that some of them are on internships, some of them are on detachments. The officers that deal directly with the alder persons, those are community outreach officers. And then we have some of the detective bureaus. And so we kind of adjust people based on needs. And I think what they were trying to say is that, hey, based on the call volume, you really don't have the luxury of doing some of the things that you're doing with some of those officers. They didn't say that it wasn't constructive. And a lot of times those are ways in which we train folks to ready them for some of these different assignments. But their bottom line was that, hey, you really need to have a certain amount of people, even though you have them designated, we don't want them to do anything but patrolling. And so they said, well, you need to get 54 persons back to answering the radio, and some of the internships and detachments and things along that line, or something that can wait until you're in better shape. And so again, we have no problem with that recommendation. We can do that. We got how many people in? We have it's 54 people in the academy right now. The soonest class graduates. I'm sorry, yeah, 28. The soonest class graduates next week, and then we have a class graduating in September, and then we have a class starting on May 23rd. And so that's one way. And so the other issue that they brought up was staffing adjustment. And they talked about how you need to adjust. Naturally the districts 5, 6, and 4 are needing more attention. And so the best way to adjust that, and Alderwoman Boyd, how we kind of inherited, and how that 6th district went from 9, how that was kind of divided up. They're really saying that model wasn't the best, but the way to address it best is to as people graduate from the academy, have those persons put in places where that number will be more compatible to the call volume. Again, all doable. So there's nothing, I found those recommendations constructive. And I agree, we have insight that would be unique to St. Louis because we're here, but at the same time, when there's folks that are looking at best practice and looking all across the country, they certainly can make some valuable recommendations at times. And like I said, these are ones that are doable. So nothing that they said was something that's far reaching. It's just really about, hey, you're going to have to delay some of these additional duties that you're allowing people to do and focus on the radio. And I think Dr. Isom has made some excellent recommendations on call diversion. They even talked about some officers that are civilians that handle a lot of calls that we would potentially have that don't go to the police that we answer now. So I do, sometimes a different voice, a different look at a situation is constructive. I said, these are, nothing about what they said was earth shattering in the sense that, okay, we can see how that would be valuable. And then of course, the whole Bureau of Investigation, that's 98 people. If we needed to pare some of that down, we could do that too. But I think the point is that we took those recommendations as constructive. We can make those adjustments. And again, Dr. Isom is looking at ways we can divert calls away from the police department. And like I said, that's a work in progress as well. But I think that those recommendations are legitimate. And I think that's something that we can implement rather quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say they weren't legitimate. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is sometimes when people recommend on the outside, recommend things for you, then you have to look within yourself to say, what do we need to do different? Because it's just realistic that policing is not as policing we knew.
That's right.
And we know that. So it's different. And so I guess my issue is the numbers that they came up with when they said you had 700 and something odd police officers and you only have so many that's out there. So that's what kind of threw me, because I'm like, okay, so where are these other police at? And that was my question. It wasn't that company that I was condemning. It's that we continuously keep beating a dead horse. We keep going back to different people. And it seems like we're looking for different answers. They all giving us the same answers, but that's just my frustration. I'm like, and I guess my thing is the community is real clear on what we need, but the issue is how are we managing the manpower to get those needs addressed? And that was my bottom line. And I'm sorry, Dr. Isom, because you were getting ready to say something, so.
No, I was just going to add on to what the chief is saying. And, what you want to build is both from an individual and an organization, both are continuously learning and evaluating, similar to Chief Hayden, continuing his education, getting a graduate degree, and myself, those were from outside entities, but the value of those education brought a greater perspective on how to run the organization. And I think the organization has to do that as well, is continue to educate itself, continue to evaluate itself. And it's not that the outsiders are telling us what to do. They're looking at what we're doing in concert with us and hopefully giving us suggestions that we could tweak our deployment, tweak our strategies as we go forward. So I think this is a continuous process, and sometimes it reveals things that we already know or reinforces things we already know. And sometimes it might give us new hints about some other direction we can go in. So I do think this is a continuous process, and bringing people in from the outside periodically to look at it from a different angle, I think is always productive for us. So we will use CPE. We might not use everything they say, because you're right, we will bring it back, and we have brought it back to our leadership on the police department to shape it and implement it in a way that makes sense for us as a city.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Was that all, Alderwoman?
Yeah, and my last thing was Chief Hayden. No, I always say, I still think the white shirts need to come out the office and they need to get out. So I keep saying that because we need the police out there. And so they might not lock people up or enforce things, but the visibility makes a difference in all of our communities. And it used to be, you would say North St. Louis, but now the way the challenges that you all are dealing with is throughout the city as a whole. And so north, south, east, and west, we just need the visibility of police. And we do understand the shortage of staff that we have. And so it's just, to me, other things that we need to look at as a city, because I keep saying as city employers, we are not the best for our city employees, because I just feel strongly that we need to have better packages for our policemen and firemen to ensure that we're competitive with other counties and cities. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm gonna go backwards up to Alderwoman Carol Howard. I know you're here. You said you were gonna join us late. I see you're here.
I apologize. I was late. And, you know, we're talking about reimagining public safety, and we've talked about, you know, working with social services to alleviate some of the crime and so forth. And I guess my question is, are we doing that? And then I agree with the alderman from Alderwoman Boyd, you know, this study, it doesn't take, I'm not law enforcement, but it doesn't take too much to figure out. You know, we've got a whole lot of white shirts, and the only time you see them is if there's a major crime, and then there's 100 officers, and you kind of wonder, okay, so where's everybody? What are the ones doing that are supposed to be just watching what's going on? So, but that, I think Alderwoman Boyd always brought that out already. But I guess my question is, how are we working with social services and I guess drug rehab? You know, we've got this bill with the tents. I don't see giving people a tent is a way to get them back in society. And that's a whole nother issue. We won't go down there, but I guess the point of the question is, how are we working with social services to bring these people to some accountability and encourage them to get off the streets, to get help, whatever it be, that mental health, drug rehab, whatever it is, and get rehoused? How are we working with, because you gotta, you know, we need some authority and we need some direction with this. So I don't know who would be the person to explain that, but I'll leave it out there and you all can respond as whoever has the answer.
Yes, Alderwoman. So as you know, we have the co-responders, and those are social workers that ride with the officers now, and they are available. I think with the exception of overnight night watch, they are available all in all districts all the rest of the day. And so they're in the 7
hours. I find that a little bit. I find that a little bit off-putting that they, you know, have a 9 to 5 job in a 24-hour city.
Well, yeah, it's actually, so they go to 11. So they start at 7, they go to 11. But we're trying to add the overnight one.
Okay, because I really believe, you know, when you wake up in the morning, no good happens after midnight.
That's right. But yeah, so I would say the relationship is working well. So when you have a co-responder there, they're able to not only provide services at the time, but they can do more follow-up service and more wraparound services. I would tell you that it's even on scene, it's very valuable. I've been to some very critical incidents whereby the people kind of refer to them now as the purple, people in purple shirts. But as far as calming down a very chaotic homicide scene, they're there assisting with that. The ability for us to just be able to make the scene safe and secure the scene is, a lot of people don't understand how challenging that can be when you have friends and family members rushing out in the middle of the street and that type of thing. Very chaotic, but I have seen that work firsthand with the co-responders working and talking with families, calming folks, asking questions about whether or not they need other additional services, and the fact that they go back even the next day. And so I would say that just as I made my observations, and we could, Dr. Ashton will probably get some more numbers, but my observations have been that the officers welcome their presence, and that so it is, they don't go until after the scene is safe. But I think that it's something that's beneficial to our city, and that cure violence is likewise something working. Now we don't work as closely with cure violence because that's not a law enforcement program, but the things they do to calm the scene and or prevent retaliatory action, and as you know, in a lot of neighborhoods, there's some of these feuds are ongoing. Tension is family related, and so the ability to work with those families to relocate folks when they can't calm folk down, to get people out of town, to get people safe with relatives, all of that I think is working toward helping us. Now, one thing you can't measure is how many shootings or what have you didn't happen. You can't measure that, but I believe that all of that is part of our successes. Again, at the end of last year, and of course, continuing into this year.
Yeah, and I just to give you some context on the supervision, Alderwoman Boyd, certainly we want the white shirts out as much as possible, given that supervision. But in the context of the number of people, 1,200 officers, from white shirts that make up the police department, total about 80. That's at full strength. About 60 lieutenants. We have authorized 10 captains, but I don't think we have that many. 5 majors and then also the lieutenant colonel. So out of the 1,200 people, in terms of white shirts, there's only about 80 of them. While we can look at that structure to see if we have too many in some places, but I just give that context to say that there are not that many white shirts out of the 1,200 officers that we have on the police department. But also to go back to the fire department to give context to that, there are 114 captains and 19 battalion chiefs and 5 deputy chiefs. So 114 captains and 19 battalion chiefs and another, I think, 4 deputy chiefs.
Sure. And ma'am, if I can respond to that as well. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sack. I'm the Bureau
Hi.
Commander of Community Policing. I also have specialized enforcement. As of Monday, we have 1,093 commissioned members on the department. Of those 1,093, there are 1,021 who are blue shirts. And that includes 177 sergeants. So of the police officers, 844 at the rank of police officer, 628 are assigned to me. So they're out there on the beat. So that's like 75% of the officers are assigned to that, and 62% of the total population. And I have 125 of the 177 sergeants. So once you take out the 1,021 blue shirts, you have 72 white shirts. So I think there's a misconception about the number of white shirts around. Of those, there's 54 lieutenants. There's 6 districts with 3 watches. So we're actually understaffed on lieutenants because we don't have that command, the level of command supervision we need at that point, and that creates liability on the city. There are 7 captains, 5 majors, and 5 lieutenant colonels. So there really aren't that many white shirts out there. And when you think about it, the captains are working their districts, Monday through Friday. I've got captains who are covering line platoons because they don't have a lieutenant. So they're doing double duty. And the majors, 3 of them are out in the area stations who are managing the districts. One is the commander of community, professional standards, and the other major is in Bureau of Investigations. homicide, child abuse, sex crimes and the like. So there are really only 72 white shirts here as of Monday. But there are 1,021 blue shirts here in all.
So that 1,021 blue shirts, all of them are on the street?
So those are sergeants and officers. So they could, of those officers, I have 628 who are out in the street in a district or in specialized enforcement, which would be mobile reserve, anti-crime, aviation, K-9. That's the 628 officers. And then the 125 sergeants work with those officers. And that's out of 177.
So, okay, so again, how many are on the street?
Well,
I mean, the patrol, let me be clear,
okay.
that does the daily patrols. That's what
So-
I'm looking at.
Okay, so I've got assigned to my patrol divisions, taken out specialized enforcement, 533 assigned to districts.
And so how many are you short?
Well, I mean, according to the city, we are down, we're only down, one on, at the rank of officer, we're down 114. According to what the city's authorized strength of 958.
Okay, that's what I was
Right.
trying to get clarity.
But what I think she's trying to get to indirectly is it's only what, 41% of the officers actually answer radio calls. It's either 41 or 42%.
I guess the question is, Major Sachs, how many of those are deployed on regular shifts that patrol the neighborhoods, you know, to each district or each, area?
Okay, so anti-crime mobile.
700, give me the number again, 700.
Sure, there are 533 officers and 111 sergeants. So that's 644. That doesn't include the folks in specialized enforcement.
And that would be like K-9.
Right, and they're also on the street, mobile reserve, they're hitting our mission zones, the high crime areas. Any crime is going out in the areas looking for the carjacker. So they're on patrol. They're not in a building somewhere. They're out there patrolling, doing their particular discipline to try to address violent crime, which is the goal.
So I think maybe Colonel, just giving all the persons just a better understanding of strategy, right? Certainly you have officers in patrol who answer radio calls. That's the 500 plus the 100 or so sergeants who supervise them. Their time is very sporadic, moving from call to call, doing reports. They do have the ability to do some patrol for visibility, but it is a broken patrol. And so we do use other units to be more focused on patrol, visibility, and enforcement, who are not distracted by the call. So when people look at, well, how many people do we have on patrol? Well, we have way more than just there in the district. You know, we have anti-crime, we have mobile reserve, we have traffic. We do that because if traffic was answering calls, we would never be able to get them out there to enforce traffic because they'd be answering calls all the time. So it's always a strategic sort of mix of how many people you want answering calls with broken up patrol and how many people you want dedicated to enforcement and visibility that are not have the responsibility of answering calls all the time. So I just want to give you that understanding.
Okay, I guess when he talks about your 500 and whatever, okay, and we have 3 shifts,
Right.
okay, and you have 3 sub-district, no, 6 districts, right?
Mhm.
So what does the math come down to each shift? And I
Well,
know you can't say there's so many in each shift at each place because they move, yeah.
Right.
But I mean, what would that give you on each shift if it was, you know, just the numbers?
So the numbers aren't even in every district.
I
because-
understand,
Yeah, so,
but I'm just talking about average numbers. If you had that and you went by the numbers and, you put so many officers at the third shift at each district, how many would that give you in each district?
that would, I mean, just off the top of my head, I think we're looking at 18 on a platoon with 1/3 being off. So maybe
12?
10 or 12.
Mhm. But we don't always have the 12.
No, we don't, no.
12 per shift?
Uh-huh.
Sure. And now that, then you also have to look at somebody might be on limited duty or,
Mhm.
out
12 per shift.
extended sick, they're still on that platoon. Or if they're on administrative duty, so pending internal investigation. So that number fluctuates, but as I said, we can't deploy the exact same number to every district.
Right, because of the
crime is
geography
different.
and,
Sure, so-
geography, crime, all kinds of factors
Right.
come. But
Right.
I guess my question would be, if we're looking at police standards, I mean, I come from teaching and there's classroom standards. What's the average pupil teacher ratio? What would that be ideally if that's what, we had these people come in and look, and I'm sure they went by those measures. Is that correct? Dr. Isom or whoever needs to answer that or Chief?
Yeah, I mean, how many police in a particular city is really a community judgment.
Mhm.
There is no particular standard. What people look at oftentimes is population and number of police. That may not be the most accurate way to look at it,
Right.
because you may have more geographic area to cover. You may have less geographic area covered. You may have more crime than a particular area. So it really, Alderwoman Howard, is a community assessment of what the community feels that they need to police their neighborhood. If you just take the ratio of square footage or number of people, we have more police officers than most cities. You take a city like Oakland in California, probably has the same number of police, but there are way more citizens in Oakland than they are in the city of St. Louis proper. So that makes it complicated. And so it is a community decision as to what is appropriate for each individual. Back to what Alderwoman Boyd said, every city is different.
Mhm. And our community is demanding more presence and more police. I just was yesterday in Ways and Means, and Holly Hills is establishing their own special business district so they can hire police, which is another, thing that we have people, officers, because we don't pay them enough,
Right.
doing extra duty, and now you're increasing their hours to 12 hours a day.
Right.
So we got officers that may be picking up, say, 4 hours on their other job. So we've got people out that have a 16-hour workday. I just really, that concerns me for the officers. That concerns me for their safety and their judgment and their stress level. I just, I don't know how, physically, mentally, emotionally, it's a demanding job. How can you work a 16-hour day and still, be, and I'm not saying that to disrespect anybody, but I mean, we're not machines, and I like Superman, but I don't think he really exists.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. I think you're right. The job is stressful. A single call of 1 hour could wipe you out, emotionally for the day. There's some traumatic scenes that our officers respond to, and some officers in particular units, when I was down in the Bureau of Investigations, the turnover in child abuse was 125% over a 2-year period. So some of the trauma that the officers and detectives experience is very difficult. But a 16-hour day is the longest that we allow. We are going to 12-hour shifts on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the summer months, just to increase our visibility, because we, as you've said, we have difficulty with our staffing, retaining people. So in order to put more officers out there on the street, we're flexing the afternoon watch and half of the night watch to a 12-hour shift so that we can get 4, maybe 6 officers that can hit those mission zones, those areas where the community want visibility, and we can provide that to them. But yeah, you're right. I appreciate your understanding that, you know, the job is difficult and sometimes it requires a lot of that officer as well as their families. So I forget that.
And I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about this 12-hour, weekends. And then I'm also concerned about, since it's weekends, are we taking people out of the neighborhoods for the downtown fanfare? And I understand our money, a lot of our money comes from there.
Right. So what'll happen is, and I've spoken to the captains, and they're each going to come up with a plan in their district to address their mission zones. And then we're going to look at what staffing they have based on their calls for service and their needs. And some officers, may remain in their district. Other officers might be shifted somewhere else to assist. But we'll be able to flex time to increase visibility, I think, in each district, and then still provide assistance in those districts where we're struggling with crime. Because remember, a call for service for an auto accident or a burglary, even a robbery, requires a certain number of resources. Maybe a robbery might require 2 officers and a detective and a sergeant, but a shooting might be 5 officers, a sergeant, a lieutenant, canine, evidence technician. And if it turns into a homicide, all those people are taken off the street for hours as they go down to the homicide unit to prepare their memos, to assist with the initial stages of the investigation. And that depletes the resources in that particular district, which means calls for service get backed up. So we've got to try to adjust to provide the level of service that we can in those neighborhoods that really need us. And I understand that some neighborhoods are concerned about maybe losing some visibility, but we're going to do the best that we can to kind of adjust it. The first weekend isn't necessarily what the third weekend is going to look like. The one thing about the police department is we're very flexible. And that's one of the things that I take pride in, that we're able to adjust on the fly. We're constantly evaluating what works, what isn't working, and we're willing to say, hey, this didn't work, so we're going to do something different. So, and I think that's what this is here for this summer, to see if we're not able to put more presence into the neighborhoods that need it and kind of drive down some of this violence. Because like the chief said, we don't know what shootings we prevented. We don't know what homicides we prevented. The families that aren't impacted, we don't know. So, but we want to try and give it our best effort. But I appreciate your understanding, ma'am.
And I think that's all. I'll let everybody else have a shot at it. I'm sure there's much more to learn and many more good questions out there. So thank you very much for being with us today and being so succinct in your response.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I did see Alderman Bosley stepped in. I don't know if he's still with us or not.
Always heard.
Okay, so we might actually have a quorum now. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
You got a quorum for some time.
Yes, sir, you do have a quorum now.
Okay, so let's what we need to do, just while we have the quorum, we just would need to get approval of the minutes from the May 4th meeting. Shouldn't take but a second to do this. So just take a motion from the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderman Ryan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Page, Chairman Vaquero,
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on down the list. Alderman Bosley, Brandon Bosley. Any questions on the report that came out
I
from the chief?
do. So I guess they may be germane to the report. One of the things that I'm very, very interested in is how we are promoted. There are definitely some, I talked to a lot of police officers that I'm a citizen at the same time when it comes down to interacting with police officers. But there are some great officers that I do believe deserve to be given a chance for promotion. And I believe it passed the test, but weren't able to get promoted. So I am very interested in how.
Alderman Bosley, if you could speak up, what he's saying is something that I had asked the chief about earlier before the meeting. But it's about people that score fairly high on the promotion list, but are jumped over for someone way down the list. I think is the question he's asking.
Right. So there it is. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking very loud. I can speak up if you need me to. I'm in the hallway, so I don't know how loud to project so you don't get an echo. So if you need me to speak up, you say you need to. So that is my question though. I do know some officers do a great job here, especially in this ward. I have one of the most dangerous wards here in the entire city. I see what these officers go through. I have been at homicides where, not naming any officers, but I've seen them bawling, actually crying about the things that they witnessed and, the bodies that they have to pick up. I guess, they deal with a lot. And some of these officers, like Alderman Farrow said, they do score high and they do deserve to be promoted, not just because they scored high on the test, but because they do real work that requires what we consider that bridge building between community and police officers, that that higher position would do nothing but help propel them more into a position where they can help be that mediation between police and community. So I do have some interest in understanding why folks get looked over, and there are people who've been on the force for some time, score high, could possibly be up for promotion but don't get promoted.
So
And you may say that's on a case-by-case basis. I don't want to put any officers out there because I know and this is being respectful. I'm not trying to get anything retaliatory put on a person, but man, our officers work hard. I literally, we have the most number one, I guess, crime per capita, homicide per capita in the entire United States. And my ward, unfortunately, right now is number one. It's nothing to be happy about. But I'm just saying that to say, I straight see these officers, and some of them are very, very skilled to be able to move in different positions, go in different capacities of work in other jurisdictions or in other places in other areas, and do really, really great police work based on the hard police work that they do here. So, that being said, if we need to talk offline about a case-on-case basis, we will. But I want to throw one officer out there in particular, man. She busts up.
I wouldn't use names, and I would think offline is going to be more appropriate, because I also might hold something eventually, because in the fire department they go straight down the line, and I also had someone call me. Well, I actually had a couple people call me where they jumped over people from here that went way to there. But I think since we didn't ask them to speak on that, and if they want to, they can. But I have the same concerns you have.
yeah, I can speak to that, Alderman. I do not go by test score only. What I've gone by since I've been chief for the past 4.5 years is your resume, which includes your test score, your work ethic, and your work reputation, and the current needs of the agency. And so that's actually 3 different factors. Each potential candidate does come before me, and it gets an opportunity to talk to me about their qualifications. And I think that it's not a perfect science, but certainly I have, in my whole time as chief, I've only had one grievance which was withdrawn based on promotional process. And so I think that at the end result, the end results look apparently pretty fair to most people, and at least to the participating. If I'm going by that, the participating applicants really have not found cause to file. Like I said, one person did file a grievance and it was withdrawn. They withdrew it on their own. And I think that outside of that one instance, the applicants and the participants have seen promotions at least halfway decent. I think that's a conclusion I can draw from that by using that formula.
So then I appreciate that. And just being real, you haven't been the chief for very long. So I'm not putting anything on you. You are doing the best. I do believe that you're doing what you can in the position that you have. You have a very, very particular position that you have to play, a part you have to play within the department. So, I do understand, especially coming from one administration, so there's a lot that goes on in that. But, I know at some point in time you weren't the chief. So I do know that you have heard those officers complain, some of them, and talk about the different factions that are in the police department, and how people are just being honest, keeping it all the way 1,000. Some folks are not looked at. It's been highly favorable as some others. Like I said, I do want to talk to you about some officers offline. We got some officers do great work. The people, the folks that work in this ward, and I have to say it again, and in any ward on the north side of St. Louis, where these killings take place, where you got folks getting the hell beat out of them, you got folks getting shot right afterwards, these retaliate, these folks are equipped with the human-based knowledge that it takes to really be an officer and go in other places and create the change necessary within the city. When we get to a place where we have a formula to stop petty theft and all the petty things that happen in other areas, where we can address some of the more critical things like crime, there'll never ever be a place where it's drug-free, or it won't be ever a time where it's crime-free, folks. We have to know what we want out of our police department. But I do think, along with making sure that they are incentivized and we pay them well, I don't think there ever needs to be any type of rhetoric, or not to say ever, because there's always going to be some biasness within any job you have, and I completely understand that. But as far as the officers that are up for a promotion, I do think it's a good idea for us to understand why those folks who did not get promoted and I won't say looked over, got chosen for reasons that not only you would know, but you understand the formula, and folks that are making those decisions. It'd be a good idea for us to know some of that information too, because we do, we work, like you work with them every day. We out there every day too, so, there's some captains and some lieutenants out here that are, doing an immaculate job. So I just I want to throw their names out so bad because I'm advocating for them. They could leave. They could leave tomorrow and they'll do a great job. And that's the problem with, I believe what's going on. Folks don't sometimes advocate for the people who have the potential to leave. They don't say, hey, we need to pay them. We need to give them a raise. We need to give them that person, because other officers are looking up to them too, saying if they ain't gonna treat them right, they ain't gonna treat me right. So we'll talk offline. And once again, I appreciate you, Chief. The other question I have, and it's in regards to the amount of accidents we've kind of had in the last few weeks going on with the speeding that's going on. I'm not going to speak directly about the accidents in particular, because I know those things are under investigation. As far as what we are doing, or what we are looking, or potentially could be looking to do about the officer's disposition and being able to chase individuals. When you see someone in the commission of some sort of a petty crime, that alludes to, once you get away from something petty, you can do something large. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have. People really recognize that the community is at risk when the police execute these chases, but more importantly, as individuals who put the community at risk before the police engage. So, I don't believe that the police should chase. I just be clear. But I believe there needs to be some type of a structured way that we do with our special officers that work in that capacity, who train on these narrow streets and these residential areas the way that the city's set up to be able to successfully be able to, acquire someone that they are attempting to apprehend. But I know there are a lot of residents that are looking, and at some point in time in the summertime, as I got high speeds all the time. in my ward. And I'm frequently thinking about what we can do about that in particular. I know if we help with the traffic, then it maybe helps you all a lot better be able to execute your job. So, with that being said, do you have any ideas or anything that we could do as the board, within maybe within these indicators that we have that could help, maybe lead to some sort of solution with not just the speeding, but being able to deal with the amount of individuals that are leading our officers on a high-speed chase. That's, once again, we got people dying regularly from that now. We don't need that to be the stigma. And I know you all are working hard.
Yes, sir, Alderman. So earlier in the meeting, I think the question was asked whether or not we have a pursuit policy, and of course we do. We have, it's very specific, and in fact, it's one of the more conservative ones across the country. That being said, naturally, we're very disturbed when some incident involving high speeds or anything along that order that results in the incident that happened over the week, a week or so ago, are very tragic. But at the same time, again, we although I can't go into that investigation, I can tell you that we're very deliberate when our force investigative unit investigates incidents that there is any police involvement at all. And so we are looking at that. And again, we'll be looking at policy and whether or not it's adhered to. Of course, we would preach the policy to officers. They have to read it once a month to ensure that everybody's on the same page. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that people are not only reading the policy, but following the policy. And so, again, that's why we have our force investigative unit that looks into those things to make sure that our policy is complied with. And then if it's not, then we would take the appropriate corrective action. But again, I can't get into specifics about that particular incident, but I can tell you that that we are evaluating the event in its entirety.
Understood. So I definitely don't want to get into particulars, and maybe I didn't form the question right. My apologies. I talk a lot because I think about this stuff a lot. So sometimes I can start here and make it well-rounded because I want to make a well-rounded question. Every now and then, maybe it doesn't end well like this. So I apologize if that's what happened. My question is specifically is, do we have any ideas in particularly that we are working on that you may have or other officers may have that can help address the way that we deal with those individuals who do feel comfortable or not feel comfortable, who continue to elude the police? Because that sets a precedent in our city that you can get away with just about anything if you're going 60 to 80 miles per hour in this 30.
So one thing we're doing, Alderman, is that we are identifying high accident-related intersections, and we're doing a lot of our traffic control and traffic patrol around those intersections in the attempt to decrease accidents, particularly places that have had accident fatalities or what have you over an extended period of time. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the traffic deployment we have?
Sure.
So just to be clear, I'm sorry, just to be clear, I'm not speaking just about the traffic. I know we got problems with people having accidents, right? I'm speaking more so about, literally everybody runs from the police. You know how it happens in my area, and right around the 4th and 6th, folks run from the police left and right. They don't even be having nothing to do in there. That means folks get pulled over and will run just because they got a warrant. And 9 times out of 10, most police officers won't even lock you up if you got a petty warrant unless you did something stupid. So, I'm asking Jermaine, and I'm not cutting you off. My apologies, not trying to, just so I can be as specific as I can be. I know we got plenty of accidents and folks speeding in that capacity, but as far as folks running and the comfortability with it, I think once we start catching folks, and there's a way where we can set up any type of way where we can help you all apprehend individuals or that car, I think that is more so of the kind of direction of the question that I'm asking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not necessarily about the accidents. It's about everybody shooting in these cars. They're doing drive-by in these cars, and then you just hit 40. Not 40. You hit 40. You hit 70. You're gone. You see, God, they be out of here. They hit Illinois right here. I'm right here at the bridge. And you know how it cracks over here. So,
Yeah, Alderman, we are, like, as you know, we're always enlisting the help of the public in solving a lot of these incidents where people are running from the police. We try to put out as much surveillance photos and pictures that we have that identify persons to get folks help. But I think you're absolutely right. And when we do catch folk, that they are held accountable. And I think that's an important piece to the puzzle as well, that people know that there are a legitimate and significant legal prices to pay when it comes to being taken into custody in an instance of, for example, a vehicular manslaughter and cases like that. But you're right, the prosecution is just as important as the arrest.
Okay. My other question would be, like, once again, the speeding thing is a big problem. I know we're looking at officer retention also. Would it be amenable, would it be helpful if we maybe figured out some way to incentivize police officers who do live in the city, because we cannot pay them, what it seems like an extra $5,000 to $7,000, to maybe give them a break on taxes. If we can figure that particular piece out, that'd be something the committee would be okay with looking into, as far as real estate taxes or personal property taxes. These people help protect our properties. Anytime somebody breaking in your car, they're gonna come, to try to help fix that issue or problem. Anytime somebody breaking in your house, these people are coming because that's a liability to you. So, I would think if we can't pay them adequately, we probably would do good figuring out a way to kind of help balance some of the expenses that they have to shell out every single year based on what it is that the city provides as far as services, whether that's trash or real estate taxes. If we can't pay these people adequately, give them something that says, hey, we care about you enough. You live here, we're gonna give you 20% off your real estate taxes because you save ours every single year from theft and vandalism and all kind of other instances of crime or whatever it looks like. We're trying to protect what it is that we value in the city. So I'm just trying to look at different ways where, and I've talked to the mayor's office about this before we put out the bill, that we're requiring folks to pay back the money that is spent during the time that you're working to become a police officer and you're going through training. And once again, the reason I say that a little hesitantly, because that's not done in a way where we're trying to hurt folks, man. It was never intended to hurt any police officers or anything like that, because at the same time, I talked to the mayor's office about trying to incentivize these officers. So, that's the same question here. Like, do you think that would be something that maybe would be helpful to some of these officers if we worked on some type of a way to help incentivize? If we can't pay them or give them a bonus, at least maybe cut some of the expenses or costs that they deal with, that the city, puts on them, just based on expenses of living.
Absolutely, Alderman. I think it's something that the city has tried in the past. I don't know that the successes of it. I mean, I'm going back some time, but certainly when you talk about a young officer or incentivizing young officer, their biggest bills, of course, is their house note and their car note. And so if you talk about an apartment incentive on apartments, anything along that line would be something that would encourage a young officer or entice a young officer to come and be a part of our department. And I think that's something that's doable. But again, things that kind of mimic military incentives, benefit packages would be something to compare it to. But again, if there are ways in which officers can live in housing for at reduced rates and those types of incentives, I think would certainly would go a long way. And it wouldn't be the first time that the city actually did that type of thing.
Thank you. So I think that'd be, something that the committee would be interested in looking into. Like, we've been kind of scratching our brains and trying to figure out how to pay these folks more. What if we figure out how to just help them pay less, and give them the ability to not have as many expenses, being as they try to protect all of ours. So talked to a few folks about that. Just wanted to throw that out there. There's a few other things I wanted to throw out, but it's going to be terrible within the next few years if we don't figure out how to slow traffic down in the city and get folks who feel comfortable running from the police, to a place where they're uncomfortable running from the police. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. I really appreciate everybody being here. as far as the innovation goes, it looks like say like to address things while I'm here because I'm giving this chat up. Okay, so it looks like we spoke on something like this before. If we have, I would say let's try to figure out as a committee how to move forward on it, and how to mitigate some of the different not incentives, but the different expenses that these people have as far as living expenses while they go out here and protect us. It ain't like we got, it says 1,200 people. So, we can help them out if they helping us out every day.
It would take a board bill, probably go through Ways and Means, and would have to have a fiscal note tied to it. But it's doable. I mean, that's what we do. But, I think, and I'm just answering, I think you'll get a lot of backlash from fire, from the people that pick up trash, from the, the other, but
Maybe we need to incentivize them too, though, Chairman. Like, honestly, so think about it like this. Everybody, we got over 1,100 employees missing in the city of St. Louis. It's not because we can't pay them. Folks don't want to work for us. We don't do the best that we can to keep our citizens here. We're telling them you got to live here, work here, play here if you want to live, if you want to be a citizen. I mean, if you want to work for us, like we got to do a little better in making sure that people are comfortable. Give them free passes to the city museum or something, make your life a little bit better while working here within the city, while we, figure out how to pay folks more in the meantime. So, I feel you. And I think there will be 100% some backlash from other entities. But I said we figure out how to help them out too. The city has millions of dollars, and we got millions of dollars coming from all these different projects that we got coming. Everybody's hoping the NGA is going to bring things in, the soccer stadium. We just have to put money in the right places, and I think we got to put it into these employees and these people who work for us to make them the heart of the city.
I understand. I think unless you have something more for the chief, I think just being looking at their time and that. And at whatever point, if you want to sit down and talk about that, we can. The chief or Dr. Isom, did you have any comment on that? Or do I guess you would agree that anything we could do is a good idea as long as we can afford to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you said, any incentive that we could give to city employees to retain them or incentivize them to apply, we certainly are in favor of.
Alderman Bosley, I know your mic's off. Did you have any other questions?
No, sir. That was it. I mean, I really do have one more. I don't know if I want to throw this out public. You know what I do? Forget it. Like, hey, we got all these people driving away. Would it be okay? Would it be interesting for us to put a board bill together to help the police officers create some, like we got this GPS system and all these other things that, I'll talk offline about this.
Yeah,
this is a lot of time.
It'll be very complicated. I know what you're going to say, and we've talked about air surveillance. We've talked about different things, even the cameras, the track the license plate. Some of the more progressive seems like it's too much Big Brother. But anyway, unless you have another question, I'm going to move forward because we also still have the people from domestic violence that wants to talk to us, and I would hope that the public safety director will hang in there while we're talking domestic violence.
Okay, sorry, I do got one last question. I got two. I got you. It's going to be 1 second. 1 minute.
Okay, keep it quick.
It is going to be quick. Would you support a de-escalation unit? And that's to the chief and Dr. Isaac. Either one of you all can answer that. A designated de-escalation unit for the police department.
Chief or Dr. Isom?
Yeah, I believe that in some ways, Cure Violence is a de-escalation unit, as well as the co-responders that ride along with officers in that sense. I'll defer to Dr. Isom on additional de-escalation. Certainly our officers are trained in de-escalation when it comes to interaction with people that are really elevated in emotions. But as far as a de-escalation unit, I think that's kind of what Cure Violence does in preventing retaliatory shootings. And then it kind of what the the co-responders do when they ride with officers on scenes.
Yeah, I would agree with Chief, and I just add that our CIT trained officers are as well. But we probably need more information about, your vision for that, Alderman Boyd Bosley, to give you a better idea of our opinion.
But was that it, Alderman Bosley? We can't hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that was it. Thank you. I said I appreciate you both.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna move down the list here. Alderman Oldenburg, anything?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Dr. Isom, appreciate your time. Getting back to kind of the point and scope around the report for the Center for Policing Equity and questions specifically to that. Are the recommendations that were found in that report something that you all agree with? Which ones? What do you plan to implement associated with that, specifically where there is a redistribution of resources? Are you taking those recommendations? What's the timing of that? I think that's what has a lot of resonance in the community members' concern when, for example, District 2 has a handful of officers being transferred. The recommendation is a transfer of District 2 or District 1 officers to Districts 4 and 5. Not that Districts 4 and 5 don't need more police. I think if you ask the average taxpayer, they would say all districts need more police and more police presence. So I specifically want to kind of just cut through to which recommendations that you find had merit in that report. What are you going to implement from that report and the timing of that?
Yes, sir. So I would tell you that we believe that the recommendations were constructive. The ones that they're really only one centering around moving manpower around, and I mentioned earlier. Certainly, the one issue was for us to focus on getting the focus on persons answering radio calls as opposed to doing other things like being on internships, being even in community outreach officers. I know a lot of aldermen persons work with community outreach officers specifically designated to deal with a lot of community issues. But at the same time, I think what CPE pointed out was that if there's too much of that, when your volume is high, then you need to curtail that. And so they talked about adding 54 more persons to specifically answer the radio. And I think I mentioned earlier, I think it's very doable. Like I said, we have people coming out of the academy next week. We have people coming out of the academy again in the fall. We got academy class starting. I think Monday the 20th, whatever the week, not a week from this coming Monday. And so there are ways to address that pretty readily. A timeline, I would say certainly within 90 days or so, that is something that can be a reality. But Alderman, when it comes to then adjusting the imbalances, so one is putting it back on the street, then adjusting imbalances. What we've determined is that the best way to do that is with people coming out of the academy. So instead of the people in your constituents saying, "Hey, we're going to lose a lot of police officers right away," that won't be the messaging at all. What we can do is, as they come out of the academy, adjust that on that end. And so there can be a few adjustments quickly, a few officers here and there. But I'm saying, but as far as some mass movement of officers from one district to the next, we don't plan to do that. But we do plan to adjust over time.
Adjust as academy graduates become officers.
For the most part, yes, sir.
Would go to areas where the stacked radio calls can be reduced.
That's correct. Yeah, we have the most of that that implementation, aside from putting those 54 officers back in patrol specific operations. The big shift, and we know that's been a challenge the whole time. I mean, hey, you can't very well say, hey, that 60-some% of the violent crime is happening, or 50% of violent crime is happening in one location, and then move all officers over there. I mean, it just doesn't work out. particularly how we've been operating over the past previous administrations, past couple of administrations. So the key would be is to adjust that over time, where we can certainly readily put the numbers back to patrol specific activities really quickly.
That makes sense to me, and thank you for clarifying that. And that's something, I guess, the timing of that is just going to have to be, open-ended as you get graduates and new officers, right?
Yeah, well, and it wasn't that far off. I mean, what I saw in one place, like I said, some district might have 50 some odd officers, some 70. But I mean, again, the adjustments here or there can fix that, and then over time to maintain that, I think it comes to where folks are assigned when they come out of the academy.
Okay, got it. Okay, so real quick, talk to me a little bit more about these 54 kind of you designated, community outreach officers, or 54 additional bodies, if you will, employees that could, and the idea is that that's an appropriate number of folks that could be added to handle a situation or a radio call that doesn't necessarily require an armed sworn officer. Is that right?
Right. I think that was 15. The first it said, hey, some of the guys that you guys doing internships and detachments, community outreach and detective bureaus, hey, make sure that they you end some of those attachments, you end some of those internships. Those are the things you can readily do. The one thing that we haven't built upon yet is the whole notion of having certain calls that civilians can answer, and creating some type of a civilian personnel that can answer call diversion. Dr. Isom might want to elaborate on the call diversion piece.
Yeah. So real quick, Dr. Isom, is the call diversion piece, or that civilian kind of response, a recommendation that you think has merit and is something you all plan to implement?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, we're trying to build that out. I mean, right now we're still in the co-responder model, and identifying what calls ultimately might be a individual response by a civilian person. We're not to that point right now. Quite frankly, we're in a pattern now because you require at least one officer to be with that social worker. And as we just stated, our numbers are down. We're not in a position to expand that because, if you put more people in the co-responder model, then that's more officers off the street. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now.
Okay. Understood.
But, what I will add to the chief's comments is that I think the city has gotten, or many people have gotten, the idea that every district ought to be even with personnel. And that just is not the case. There are different demands from district to district, and that needs to be evaluated all the time. Policing is not static. We have things that are moving from district to district, problems that prop up. There may be days, there may be evenings, there may be particular locations. So I think everyone should know and understand that for a police department to be effective, it's got to be flexible. We can't have people so rigid that they're always in one shift, always in one district, even always in one strategy. So I just throw that out there to say that this notion that every district should have 100 people is not realistic.
Sure. Well, but isn't there some virtue in an officer that has a familiar territory and has a continued routine, particularly when you start talking about aspects of true community policing, not the community policing structure, organizational structure, but when you talk about getting into the community and having outreach, again, I'm not a police expert, but I would think there's value and virtue in having officers that are familiar faces year over year on the same beat engaging with businesses and engaging with community stakeholders day over day, year over year, as opposed to this flexible model where we've got crime that's flared up in a subsector of District 4. Now, all of a sudden, for 6 months, it's kind of a reaction mode. Maybe I'm not thinking about it clearly, but I would hope there's still some efforts and an idea behind bringing kind of that model
Right.
to the forefront.
No, you're correct. I just state in general
Okay.
that there needs to be evaluation and balancing of workload over time. That doesn't mean that every day you're going to be taking people out of a district,
Right.
but certainly every couple of months or maybe even every year,
Right.
we should be evaluating workload and responsibilities and determining what's the best mix.
I concur with that. That makes sense to me. Understood. Okay. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Alderman Brett Narayan.
Thank you, Chairman Vaccaro. Alderman Oldenburg covered a lot of what I was going to ask. I have heard, people kick around this idea, though, and I guess this would be directed to both Chief Hayden and Director Isom. I have heard people kick around the idea that maybe things were operated a little bit smoother when we had 9 districts as opposed to 6. And I know that there's been debate on that over the last few years. And I'm certainly not an expert, but I know from talking to officers in the 2nd district that they tell me to get from one side of the district to the other with lights and sirens on can take 15 minutes. And that seems like a lot of ground to have to cover when every second matters. Do you think that there is any advantage to revisit this 9 district structure?
Alderman, I know when we had 9 districts, we had quite a few more officers. Maybe a couple of hundred more officers. I think the 9 district model is not going to help us with response time or anything like that. I do think that as we consider balancing out, maybe some districts, maybe some spaces, some geography might be shortened, that type of thing. That's something that could be reasonable. But I think the goal is, it's kind of like, would it be better if you had X amount, add a district, that type of thing. I think, again, to add a district, you have to take officers away from a current district. I just think the model is to make sure that the radio is answered and that the officers get there as soon as possible. That means even if, for example, if an officer was closer in District 4 than where the boundary is, I think the key is what throws us off a lot of times is the boundary. The real key would be the closest officer getting the call. That's something that we can look at with GPS and that type of thing, which really mean is that the situation could be addressed. If I'm not talking about, if I'm not being territorial, I can be, hey, even though I'm assigned to District 4, I'm closer to the call than the other officer is. And so that might be a resolution, but the adding the districts would take away from the current districts. I think that's probably going in reverse of what we really want. But to your point, why couldn't somebody, if I'm closer, why couldn't an officer in a different district, the closest officer, go to call? And I think that's much more doable.
Makes sense to me. Thank you.
Sir, if I could say something to that as
absolutely.
well. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sack. I'm the commander of the Bureau of Community Policing. I'm just going to call it out. We have what we have. We have 1,093 commissioned members. As I said earlier, 628 are on the line platoons who are in specialized enforcement, mobile, SWAT, K9. But of those 1,093, 844 are officers. There's only 72 white shirts, lieutenants and above. So if we add one district, you got to increase by a captain, 6 lieutenants, and you're going to need 20 sergeants. We don't have the capacity to do that. So yeah, I got here 28 years ago. There was 1,800 and change of us working out of nine districts, and we had that flexibility. Right now, we've got to figure out how to manage everything just with what we currently have. So I appreciate that, and I talk to the officers, I feel for them because I know they've got long hauls. The 6th district also has a long haul. You know, if you're up at 270 Riverview and you get a call down to the southwest corner, that's a bit of a drive to get there. So yeah, it's tough. Our response times are decent. CPE noted that in their report. That's one of the things where we're trying to push officers to the line platoon so we can keep those response times down. And that all, is dictated by how many officers are in a district with, higher levels of crime. I know today in the ComStat meeting, I had the 2 South Patrol districts reporting about calls for service and how many arrests they had, 18 and like 26. Another district had 288 arrests. So if you think about the amount of time it takes to investigate all of those crimes that actually resulted in an arrest and all the background work that has to be done, the detective investigative works and what's tied together, that's staff intensive, that's officer intensive. So we've got to try and get a balance, not by district, but by the level of crime. And we're at a point where we do have to pay on the size of the districts. It's just the nature of the beast here.
Understood.
I do appreciate the concern.
Thank you for the explanation. The other question that I have, just because if I don't ask it, my constituents will tar and feather me. What do we need to do to get more dedicated traffic enforcement officers out on the streets?
Well, I could talk to that. I had the district captains and specialized enforcement, which includes traffic safety, send me, kind of a report of what they've done just since the beginning of the year. So, South Patrol, the 1st district, and what they do is they picked high accident locations or areas where there's a lot of speeding, because if we could reduce the number of accidents by self-initiated activity when we choose to be doing it because it's slower, then we're not taking calls for service at random times when we might be busy. In addition, citizens have fewer accidents. It cuts down on, downtime on their vehicle or any issues they might have there. But the 1st district alone in their traffic areas, and I'll say what they are: Gravois and Bates, Gravois and Loughborough, and Kings Highway and Chippewa. Those are their high accident zones, the areas where they have the most problems. They wrote 1,425 summonses there, 93 of them for expired tags. But so they're doing that. Every district is doing some traffic enforcement. It seems like South Patrol is higher than North. I think that's dependent upon their ability to have more time to do self-initiated activity. But every district has identified those problem areas and have focused their traffic enforcement to try and address problems. Traffic safety has got about a dozen officers. They spend the bulk of their time on the interstates. Quite frankly, it's a dangerous place to be. We had 2 officers struck by a vehicle, and like 4 citizens also struck by a vehicle a few months ago. Those 2 officers are still off of work. And I don't know how long it's got. I think it was December. But that was a traumatic event. So it's a dangerous place to be. But we've partnered with the county and the highway patrol. So by doing that, we're leveraging up our staffing. So we're able to hit like 70 in Union out. We'll go out into the county a little bit because we got some people flying down there. Also, as you're probably aware, and just to be, right open with it is, and we've had shootings on Interstate 70, and it's right up in that area. And we've also had them on Loughborough. I worked the homicide scene down there at 55 in Loughborough. So traffic safety picks different locations where they've got high accidents occurring, and they'll target those areas on different watches. And they're able to partner with the county and the highway patrol, so we can bring some of them in even though we might have to spend some time out there. But we're doing what we can. Traffic safety is doing a good job. In addition to them, there's also MCSAP, the Motor Carrier Safety Group, and they're the ones who are targeting the trailers that may not have the netting over the top of it, or equipment violations and the like. But we're trying to get them out there, but the districts are making an effort, and they've written a pretty good number of traffic summonses. And they have reported reductions in accidents in those locations from previous times. So again, it's hard to identify what hasn't happened, but the experience shows that there's a reduction in the number of accidents. So hey, that's a win for us, especially when we could do traffic enforcement. It's a self-initiated activity. When I'm not busy, I'll do it. And that's better than, hey, we got an auto accident. It doesn't matter how many calls are pending. We still got to try and find somebody to respond. I'm not sure if I answered your question, sir, but.
No, I appreciate the answer. I guess I'll just close with saying anything that y'all can do to attempt to decrease the overall speeds on McCausland would be greatly appreciated.
All right, I'll mention that to the district captain.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And that's all I have, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. The one thing that you said that reminded me is, what's the policy on all these cars with multi-year temp tags? I'm told that the policy is that leave them go.
No, there's no policy like that. Officers, if they got a radio assignment, they're not necessarily free to stop a vehicle. That is a cause for us to stop a car and issue a citation. Like I said, the first district alone had written 93 tickets since the beginning of the year for expired plates. But we got to prioritize our efforts. So, and our efforts are mostly on violent crime and keeping up with the call load that comes in. And then as officers have free time to do their self-initiated activity, they'll do that traffic enforcement. But it is occurring, and there's no policy saying don't stop these vehicles.
But you stop them, you drive down the street, they're all over the place. And I get a lot of complaints from constituents
Sure.
about that.
Sure, I understand it's frustrating because they haven't paid their taxes, right?
Right,
And all of us are impacted by that. Sure.
right. So, yeah, so I'm sure we'd like to see more of that written up. But that just reminded me, Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard,
No questions, thank you.
then Alderman Page. I don't believe he's here. So Chief and Dr. Isom, thank you. There's a few people off the committee that are here. Let me look here real quick. If you have something to say, raise your hand or jump in. I'd like to move on to the next group here, but anybody off the committee that has a question?
Oh, Chief and Dr. Isom, if you guys could stay for this will just
Where's your picture at? I don't see who you are. Can you see?
Sandra. If
Sandra,
you
how
don't
you
mind,
doing?
If you don't mind,
Your picture,
staying-
you sounded like someone else. If there's nobody else on the subject, I want to just thank the chief for coming in. Chief, you can leave if you need to. Dr. Isom, I wish you would stay. This is also, pertaining to domestic violence, which could also, Chief, if you want to stay, that would be great. If you have to go, I get that. So what I think I'll do is I will recognize Sandra Sombrano. She's with the City Councilor's office. Sandra, and I know you have some guests, and thank you guys for being so patient. But go ahead and let us know what you're here for and what you kind of would like to see us try to get done. And
Okay.
and Dr.
you.
Isom, if you could hang out with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear about victims of domestic violence. We won't take too long unless there's a lot of questions, right? So basically what I'm here to speak about is, as you may or may not know, I am an attorney for problem properties. I handle the I work with the nuisance ordinance. And basically 2 or more incidents in a property may cause the city to declare the property a nuisance. Once that happens, we get to meet with the owners, talk to them about what's going on, suggest, how to abate the nuisance. And if they don't abate the nuisance, then the owners, the tenants, the guests, they can receive summonses, which are like traffic tickets. They're between $100 and $500 fine. If the incidents continue, then and it involves guns and drugs, then we can take the property to a hearing and request the judge to close it for 12 months. So what we do is we intervene in whatever nuisance is happening at that property. So as you know, there maybe in 2017, I don't quite remember the date, but the nuisance ordinance was amended. And it was amended to exclude victims of domestic violence. At that time, Missouri didn't have, the statutes didn't have, so Missouri was one out of 17 states that did not have protection for victims of domestic violence, as far as like landlord tenant. So victims of domestic violence were being evicted, simply because they were a victim. So the nuisance ordinance at the time was amended to exclude victims of domestic violence. So what has occurred is that properties that we see, so I review the calls for service for different properties. And, if I can share with you, I won't share it on the screen. However, I'm looking at within one day, I sent Bree. So Bree, if you can say hi, she's a social worker. She's with the Domestic Violence Intervention Partnership, and they're under DART, which is the Domestic Abuse Response Team. And so what Bree does is whenever she gets police reports through DART, she contacts the victims of domestic violence. And Bree may be able to tell you a little bit more of what she does. However, she intervenes. In one day, I sent Bree 17 properties. Since, so for example, I have them pulled up the calls for service. There's one property that has 15 calls for service in 12 months. There's another one that has 43 calls for service, and these are 911 phone calls. Women or men asking for help. So if you can think of in a typical day, there's about 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic hotlines nationwide. So 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 4 men are victims of domestic violence. So the statistics say that on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the US. If you think about it, for those of you that have sisters or wives or daughters, I see here online, so it's me, Bree, and Hope. Between the 3 of us, 1 of us is a victim of domestic violence. So, while and I know that I'm jumping around, however, I just kind of want to give you the whole picture. So I'm looking at these calls for service to review them and see if there are properties that are a nuisance. And I see 14 calls for service, 43 calls for service per year, 17 calls for service. And what's happened is because of this amendment to the nuisance ordinance is, in a sense, we have to ignore them if all of the calls for service are in reference to domestic violence with an intimate partner. So in one day, I sent Bree like 17 properties. Another attorney sent me yesterday a list of, I think it's 12 properties. So to send to the to DVIP. Well, what I found out was that there's only one advocate. So there's only one social worker. And who the majority of the time is busy handling assaults, like domestic violent assaults, like 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree. And 3rd and 4th degree are the lower charges. Those are on the rise. So what happens is, like, the statistics show that you may start with a slap and then it will escalate to maybe assault in the 4th degree. And then it will escalate to assault in the 1st degree. So the faster that we can intervene, there may be a different result. The issue is that because I'm not able to declare the properties a nuisance, the attorneys are not able to intervene and declare these properties a nuisance so that we can talk to the owners because of the amendment to the nuisance ordinance. In a sense, we have to ignore them. However, I'm here because I looked at the numbers and I asked Alderman Bakar if he can help me because I spoke with Alderman Bosley and he told me about this committee and, you know, we were just brainstorming. And what I came up with is intervening for victims of domestic violence is basically for the betterment of everyone. And I don't know if you guys have ever been in front of someone or been at home and all of a sudden you hear outside there's a couple yelling or somebody's getting beat or whatever. Unless you've experienced that or been, I don't know, at the ballpark and all of a sudden you're walking down the street and you see somebody hitting somebody. Unless you have experienced that, it's not very comfortable. And this is just us as somebody looking from the outside in, right? Just somebody looking. But imagine being that person that's being harmed, right? Physically harmed. So one of the things that I asked was, and here I am thinking of creative ways. So I was thinking if every ward would donate, so there's only one DVIP social worker. It will be great if we have one more. It will be amazing if we have 2 more. So they would not be employed by the city. And the reason why is because, as you know, employees of the city, like we, anything that we do can be, if they do a sunshine law request, we can just give all the information, right? And so these people, these victims of domestic violence have to be protected. It has to be confidential. Because of that, DVIP, even though they work inside the SLMPD and they partner with DART, they are from a different company or agency or for-profit, which Hope is somebody that she's the supervisor, so she works at this agency. And I can honestly say that if we divide, I did the math, right? And we have 28 wards, right? 28 aldermen, alderwomen. If we divide it by ward, you would only have, each ward would only have to give $2,143 per year to add 1 more social worker. So if we want to add 2 social workers, you know, it will be like, I'm not great at math, but it will be $4,300 per year. And the reason why this would be, I know as aldermen and alderwomen, you guys must get calls about this information. Like you know what I mean? Like you must get like, okay, people are calling, people are complaining because they're being disturbed, right? Not knowing that it is what that person must be going through. So because we have to ignore those properties, we really need someone to intervene and be able to give help to these victims to be able to come out of that cycle of violence. So that's what I'm here to ask and plead with you, if there's anything that we can do to be able to, and it would be going to a non-for-profit. Is that right, Hope? And maybe you can say a little bit about.
Yeah. So I work for the Crime Victim Center of St. Louis. So we are an organization that has been in St. Louis since 1972, serving crime victims for free. So not only do we have this partnership with SLNPD that we've been here since 1997. So we've been here for a long time. We know a lot about domestic violence and those dynamics, and we try to provide a lot of psychoeducation to those victims to try to describe to them what kind of situation they are going through. But again, not only do we do DVIP, we also have legal services for victims of intimate partner violence to seek orders of protection. We have advocates at the courthouse who provide assistance with filing that order of protection, and we have free counseling. We have a lot of different programming, so we can try to, as holistically possible, provide services to these individuals.
So that's pretty much what we're here for, is to see how we can add to the staff. And it wouldn't be, and again, it's not like we can just hire an employee, because they don't work for the city and they don't work for the police department. So I think somebody said that nobody can ask questions. However,
No, that was only on the first.
Oh, okay.
We agreed that we weren't going to ask questions like, why did this guy do that, or why did that guy do this?
Okay.
Specific questions to the chief. Sometimes like in forestry, maybe you got forestry here, and instead of talking about the budget, they'll say, well, I got a tree over on this street that hadn't been done, which isn't. It gets way off of what, but no, that's not.
I understand.
Not with this. This is something different.
And it really does. I mean, it does cross the borders with a lot of things, right? So there was one case that I had where the manager contacted me, and I went to the apartment to meet with the manager, and she was just in tears. She didn't know what to do, because the father of, so this woman had 3 children. The youngest one was not the son of the boyfriend. And literally there was blood across, like it was all over the wall. And the manager told me that he came and beat up the mom and the 3-year-old. There was another case where there was a woman that was shot execution style, in front of her 10-year-old. So these are like, this is not fun and games, or, people seek revenge, right? 43 times calling the police, for silly, stupid arguments. I just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see it. There are blocks that I've seen, blocks that have 150 calls for service, and they're all domestic violence. And there's nothing that we can do to intervene, except to send them to DVIP. And DVIP does not have the resources right now to provide intervention for those victims.
So I would think, and then we kind of go through thoughts and questions, but Dr. Dan, I know we could use COVID money, but it's not sustainable money. What would be your thoughts on how we could fund them? I mean, is there grants that are available that we can get funded so that they can get?
So I know that, and I know that you're not asking me, I do know that Hope is a great advocate, and I know that she applies for different grants. Sadly, she has not come up with more grant money. Otherwise, I'm sure that she would have loved to staff another DVIP social worker, knowing the high volume. I mean, I would say that it's at least 1/3 of all the calls for service are victims of domestic violence, which is a lot, right? And so if there was grant money, I don't think that we would be here. I think that this is just, you know, what can we think outside the box? Is there anything that, any other way that we can find funds to get a social worker for these victims?
Yeah, and just to add to that, so there was actually recently the community violence intervention proposal through the city, and we did apply for that. It was a really specific service area of actually responding on scene with officers. And so we did apply for that funding, but I didn't get a specific reason as to why, but we did not get it. And I think probably because there was just a ton of different organizations applying for these funds that maybe they decided to go in a different direction.
Well, Dr. Dan, your thoughts and how we can help.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree, especially coming out of the pandemic. Domestic violence has been an increasing issue for the city of St. Louis. I'll point to a couple of other partnerships that we have. When officers get a domestic violence call, of course, they're supposed to investigate, evaluate the situation. But currently the practice is to fill out a legality assessment to see and evaluate whether or not there's immediate danger to the person in the house. You know, if there is, or if they feel that there might be, of course, there's arrest. Even if they don't feel that there is immediate danger, we have a partnership with Alive for them to contact them. As was indicated, we do have partnerships with our domestic abuse response team that help out as well, and one social worker dedicated. We also have recently issued an RFP. As was indicated, we believe we're going to have a domestic violence group working in some specific areas, not the entire city. And then we're also hiring 3 client service coordinators who will be able to do some long-term follow-up with domestic violence victims. But with all of that said, there is enough, unfortunately, there are enough incidents of domestic violence in the city of St. Louis that we could always use more partners to address the cycle of violence with domestic violence victims.
Yeah, and so my only thoughts on that too are just, we want to make sure that we are able to provide these very specific services for intimate partner violence, and just to also ensure that our services aren't being duplicated and more so supported like the Center of Police and Equity recommended.
Well, so I guess I understand breaking it down by alderman, but I don't know that ward capital can be spent in that way. I have no problem with our, putting, money aside out of ward capital. That's not an issue. But how do we go about sustaining them and making sure that, and I'm looking for advice. If I had an answer, I would say, well, why don't we do this?
And I know that I'm not part of the committee. Here's the thing. So if I can only get funds, not me, right? However, well, because I'm asking, if we can only get funds, or I think that the way that Hope works it out is like, it's the grants are done for 3 years. We're in a desperate need, like state of emergency, right? It's, even if it's for a year, like we'll take it, it's better than what we have now. So, and I don't know how the budget works. However, even if it's just 1 year, even if it's 6 months, we will take whatever anybody has.
Well, my understanding it would run roughly about $750,000 to get it to where you really want on a sustainable basis. But Dr. Dan, I guess we could use COVID money, obviously, it seems like this would fall into that. To fund it, I mean, funding it for a year or two, but how beyond it, I'll let you answer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we could probably talk more about it offline. I think there are some things that we already have underway that could support some of your efforts in problem properties. As I said, we hired a supervisor for our client service coordinators, and that person is going to hire 3 more client service coordinators who will deal with, our, increasing issues with domestic violence. So along with the other partners that we have that are already a part of our response. So I think, Sandra, we could get together after this and kind of brief you on the things that we have ongoing, and maybe it could be the support to what you're doing on your side as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And what we're gonna try and do, let's go down the committee. Let's go down the committee for questions for any or all. So let me go find the first person that's here. Is Alderwoman Carol Howard. Do you have questions or thoughts?
I do not. I'm sorry. I don't. And this is just on the public safety, or what are we?
Well, I mean, domestic violence. This one, we're on domestic violence.
No, it's an ongoing problem, and I along with, I guess, as the Dr. Isom stated, the violence going on in the city, but I don't have any questions. I don't know if her suggestion is a remedy or not, or if it's even a possible remedy, but I'd be willing to look into it. So.
And
Okay.
I would think adding people is smart, but Alderwoman Kara Spencer, I saw you jumped in with us. Questions or suggestions, thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Sandra and Hope. I mean, I think this issue is so important, and the work that you all do supporting victims could not be more important. I'm, speaking as a resident of our city, as a victim myself, and having really experienced what victim services can do, and really grateful. I think it's important to kind of think about where we can get funding like this. The aldermanic funds that we have they're authorized by voters to be used on, unfortunately, very specific purposes, capital improvements, and we don't have the authority to grant them for staff. So, just as a matter of clarity, the aldermanic funds would not really be an option for that. But we are entering our budget cycle, and there are funds that the city has beyond the aldermanic funds that we should be, we could maybe try to think through how we could support this work. I'd be interested in helping to figure out what that looks like. I just know that it's incredibly important. I think one of the things that might be helpful is kind of looking at how St. Louis County, some of our surrounding areas, successful cities manage to fund victim services. I know that's putting a lot of burden on the shoulders of you all, but having some examples of how these services are successfully funded in other areas might help us kind of round out not only opportunities, possibilities, but maybe even justifications of using funds.
So I have a question. So I don't deal with budgets. You said that it's for, so this is the Public Safety Committee, and you're saying that the funds that this committee has is only for capital improvement? Did I get that correctly?
Well, I was a little bit not understanding exactly what you were suggesting earlier. If the aldermen all allocated funds, I was presuming you meant our aldermanic capital improvement funds. The aldermen each get a pool of funds from sales tax at the beginning of each year. Those are specifically and exclusively for capital improvements, and they have to be spent on city-owned properties and the improvements of those. And we by law can't use them for any other purpose. The Public Safety Committee does have some jurisdiction on some other funds that were also approved by voters that come through a Prop S. And those funds are distributed through the Board of Aldermen's Public Safety Committee. They were specifically authorized by voters to be used for public safety issues, helping specifically with children. So those are also very specifically authorized. So this committee doesn't exactly have funds that would that could directly be applied to this work, unfortunately. I mean, when it comes to tax dollars, when voters approve those, they're under very specific circumstances, and generally speaking, have legal frameworks around them, and that the aldermanic funds would not be available for this purpose. They cannot be used on staffing, and so.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No, it's okay. So I think it's just kind of helpful that these are so confusing. I mean, all the pots of money, and I think generally speaking, folks figure that tax dollars are tax dollars and can kind of be divvied up. The general fund has some flexibility. But the general fund is usually so tight within the budget, every year is sort of going on and on. That being said, I want to reiterate just how important the work you do is, not only to those victims, but to an ongoing public safety. Supporting victims is incredibly important to prevent future violence and future crime. And I recognize that it's a really, really incredibly important piece in repairing trust in our system. And so there's just so many aspects of it that are incredibly important.
So when I said if each alder person would just donate like $2,100, I was just thinking outside of the box, like how can we divide it so we can all contribute and little bit and make it a big pot. However, if the Public Safety Committee is not, I guess, allowed to give funds for a social worker to intervene with victims of domestic violence, is there any committee in the city that does that?
Yeah, the Ways and Means, we're just now starting the budget, and what the Alderman was saying, the general budget, there is things in there that we have a budget and we're going to start hearings, and it would not hurt for you to reach out to Alderwoman Marlene Davis just to speak and ask for funds. But also I thought, with the mayor's office here, or Dan Isom here, who represents not just the ward but the city, that his thoughts and his help in figuring this out, even if the money comes through Ways and Means, this is a good place to start. It may not be the place to finish, but it's a good place to start. And what I would say is, I would reach out to Alderwoman Davis, so you speak, asking for money from the Ways and Means, because that's coming up starting next week every day. It's going to be Monday. It's 4 days a week starting next week.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just for the public's, I would say just for like broad understanding, the Ways and Means Committee in our budget here, I think this is such an important issue, but the ways in our budget process is not necessarily one that is designed to sort of have proposals put before it. So I'm saying that to help make sure that your expectations aren't, that there's some level of so that you're not expecting something to be as easy, or that's the exact maybe best process, just because generally speaking, our general fund is pretty much the year before, it kind of there's so many trash trucks and the things that typically happen. I think this is such an important issue that maybe there should be some more in-depth conversations about all the ways in which these programs are funded in cities. And I'd be happy to help. I know the chairman would as well. I think many of us would. It's not that this committee doesn't want to support you, or it's just that structurally speaking, the aldermanic committees don't have pots of money to distribute. It's just not something that we have. The budget from the city is usually the first round is set by the Board of V&A. That is the mayor, the comptroller, and the president of the Board of Aldermen presented to the board, and we can make cuts to the budget, but the process is not set up such that these types of conversations are naturally facilitated during that. I don't want to get into the weeds, but I do want to make sure that we're spending your time in the best way possible to get the outcome that we all need, which is to better support for the victims of domestic violence in our community.
And that would be great if somebody could I would love for somebody to just hold my hand and I will do all the work. I just need somebody to help me navigate through the city. Statistics do show that people are more willing to donate to animals than to women and children. So I am very aware of the uphill battle that I'm facing. And DVIP knows that too, as some of you may also know. So thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate everything that you're doing. And if somebody can, well, I don't know, Alderman Carl, I will reach out to you and maybe somebody can one of the alder people can volunteer too.
Well, let's go through the whole committee still. We've got other alder people and and then Dr. Dan, when you sit down with Sandra, I wouldn't mind being there, because if there's whatever we can do, whether it's by way of board bill, by way of whatever, I do think this is important. So
I jump in real quick. I am so sorry to interrupt. I again just want to, and thank you all so much for explaining all of this. That completely makes sense. And I know that Sandra had mentioned this before, but something else that I certainly want to make clear is that because we are that separate nonprofit entity, we can offer true confidentiality to victims of intimate partner violence. This is crucial for their safety. So if we are subpoenaed, for example, then we can file a motion to quash. And so we don't have to testify. But somebody who is a part of that criminal justice system doesn't have that luxury. So that is something that I really want to make that distinction clear. I know that there are a lot of efforts being made in the city, in this county, and it's all very exciting. I just hope that we're all coordinating together and that we're also being supported during this.
But I would think that if there's grants out there, getting support of many aldermen to add their name to the ask for the grants might help.
You would think, right? You would think.
I would hope. Let me run down the list. Alderwoman Pam Boyd, just your thoughts or how we can help.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let me Alderman Bosley. Just any thoughts?
So I don't as a specific question. Thank you, Ms. Umbrano. How much do you think you actually need? What would do a good 2-year program for us to be able to look at the analytics as far as what has changed based on the funding that we are able to potentially provide, and be able to say, hey, in the last few years, God, man, let me tell you something. If y'all don't know, a whole lot of these shootings and killings, they are from domestic abuse. Like a lot of stuff has to deal with drugs, but we don't know how to deal with our personal situations here in our communities, y'all. Like, I swear to y'all, like, I have one of the worst communities in the world. You'd be surprised how many people killed each other over a dispute, like a straight cousin. You got into it with your family member and shot your family member over some. I mean, some of the silliest stuff. I mean, you really can't imagine some of the homicides that take place here and the shootings that take place unless you deal with it on a regular basis. Like, so for instance, I've had a mother call me and actually say, "Hey, I want you to do an investigation on this block and send in the city department." The city department went over there, locked everybody up, and her son. She calls me why her son is locked up and like, "Hey, I need you to help me get him out of jail. Like right now, he's in a paddy wagon." I'm like, "Well, if I get him out of the paddy wagon, everybody's gonna know that he got some special strains and he's not gonna have a good time next week. He may end up dead. Like, it's a real thing. Like, that's So fast forward to a few months later, this same individual who's trying to save her son shot her car up because she would not let him in the house to sell more dope on the exact same block where we had the police do a raid, lock everybody up, put him in a position to end up, being in it. The point that I'm making is domestic things happen on such a personal level, you all, that, I mean, you could, I mean, it's so serious. This is one of the things in our city that there is no looking at how we can find funding. We got money out here. If we want to save the city, if we want to put ourselves in a position where we realistically are changing the trajectory of how many homicides we have, we got to look at why homicides take place. 60 to 70% of them, maybe 40, 50%, I'm sorry, I mean, not get me off, but those statistics are for drug-related incidents. But a whole nother 30, 40%, that's domestic. We have a problem with handling our personal circumstances and situations in the city. Now, the only individuals that's going to help that is a specialized unit. The only folks that are busting their behinds, I work with Miss Sombrero on a regular basis. This is one of the only attorneys that I know for sure if things are going on, I can call this woman and things are going to happen that day. Not to where buildings are going to get shut down, but there will be a response from the attorneys to where individuals are trying to find out what conspired and what the city can do about it from an actual standpoint of the law, if you will, right? So this woman is saying, "Hey, we got these issues with domestic abuse." Now, those are things that are tangible. We can't predict crime. People out here robbing, stealing, and wake up every day and want to become criminals. But the domestic stuff, the people that have a history of beating people, hurting people, individuals that are getting multiple relationships, and you have women that are crying out here saying that I need a restraining order against an individual, and judges saying, "Hey, there's not enough evidence." This woman works tooth and hand with those people to try to get them to the point where that judge is willing to say, "All right, there's enough evidence there from the police department and the cost of service to help you get what it is that you need in this domestic dispute, to help that judge give that individual what it is they need to keep people away from them who are trying to hurt them." So when you got people who are saying that one of the most important sectors in our city is crime, you got this person saying, "Hey, we need money for the domestic problems that exist here. We don't need to find money for it. There's money out there. We need an ask. How much money do you need, Miss Sombrero? I need you to write it all out. Tell us exactly how many people that you need, exactly how much they need to be paid, and let's play ball and let's see in the next few years what you come up with analytically that we can say this has changed the trajectory of what has happened in our communities because of the amount of money that we put into this particular one clause. There'll never be an eradication of crime, but we most certainly can address the domestic things where individuals don't feel comfortable putting their hands on a partner that they say that they love, putting their hands on an individual in this city where they got to go back to that same damn home where we control whether you got an occupancy. Those things have to change, and folks got to feel comfortable living here knowing that you can go to sleep at night with the person that you feel like you love, and they're not going to wake up and punch you in your eye, and you're going to be able to get away with it. It's messed up out here. Right now, my daughter's mother personally is dealing with domestic dispute. Punched in her face, beat up right outside my office. Had him locked up. She let him go. She said, I don't want to deal with this. And our women are dealing with that on a regular basis, trying to figure out how to be loved by these men who beating the hell out of them and telling them, I'm beating you because I love you. You can't beat me because you feel bad in your life. You can't beat me because you feel like you love me and you want to tell me this is the way that I show my love. When you finally get to a point where you're ready to tell somebody about that beating, our attorneys need to be able to do something about that. And this is one of those ones who have, God, this woman will go to bat for the women in our community and the men, anybody who has been domestically abused. There's no way she can do her job without proper funding. And if we talk about reducing the amount of crime we have in this city, we cannot look at the statistics that we already have that say that crime, drugs, domestic disputes are 100% a part of what it is we're trying to reduce, and not put in the proper amount of dollars to reduce the amount of things that happen from the individual who's saying, I can make this reduction if I had this amount of funding. We ain't never had this amount of funding. So I will tell you this, Ms. Brown, you put together a list of individuals that you believe are individuals that you would like to be involved in this, who need a particular pay, some type of structure where we can analytically be able to look at it in a few years from now. This money needs to be spent. Right now, we spend it on tractor trailers. We spending it on trucks.
I already have the what is it? The amount.
The figures, the
The
proposal.
figures. Thank you. I appreciate it. And that's one of the things that as you're talking, Alderman Bosley, I was thinking like, wow, why didn't I think about when the alder people passed this amendment to the nuisance ordinance? Because I'm assuming that everybody voted on this, right? Is that how amendments to ordinance occur?
Yeah, the majority of the time, but just being honest, sometimes if an alderman brings something to the table and when that alderman is fighting for something, sometimes it's very specific, right? I got a lot of things going on in my neighborhood, and I bring something to the table, and maybe just because I had an issue, my people are saying we need to change this. That may not change everything in the city for other aldermen who are having the same issue, but it's more specific, and I need to be more specific about the language. So,
well, and what I was just thinking about was when this was about to happen, it would have been great if somebody would have said, okay, since we're taking these cases away from the prosecutors for the nuisance ordinance, what's going to fill in the gap? Like, how are we going to address this issue that's going to be ignored from now on? However, we can't go through the past, but I do appreciate Alderman Bosley, your words, your kind words. And yeah, I will definitely be, open to any suggestions. I guess we can always do car washes, right?
So no. You're not gonna have to do no car washes. What I'm saying is specifically, listen, you put together how much you need so you can come back to this committee and say, this is how many employees I want. This is how much they get paid per year. So
I would love to have 2 more DVIP social workers. And
how much we looking at?
So it will be 100, and for 2 more per year, it'd be 120,000.
So you need 240,000 for the next few years for us to be able to show that you're making an impact.
Yeah, so usually Hope finds that she does the grants 3 years, I think. So that would be
360.
Yep. Oh, you're good with math. 360,000. Yes. For 3
all right.
years.
So with that being said, our committee needs to look at putting together and aside $360,000 for domestic disputes. Y'all know how many people out here getting smacked in their face every day and don't know how to run away from the situation and problem. Period. We got too much money to be not addressing the most problematic issues in our city. Domestic abuse is one of them. $300,000, first of all, ain't enough. So when it comes down to it, this woman is one of our attorneys who is telling us that she needs a certain amount to do a particular job that is already analytically looked at as being a problem within our city. When you go and look at the problems and the calls for service that the police are dealing with every day. So what we're not going to do is act like that we don't have the money out here to help these folks. So with that being said, I favorably will ask the committee to look at giving these dollars away through ARPA funds or whatever it is that we need, because it's a part of what's going on in my community, which is one of the most dangerous communities in the entire United States. And I'm gonna keep throwing it out there because we are. I'm not gonna throw it out there and not say that. I'm not saying that in a way where I'm bragging on it, but I'm saying it because we deserve everything. Every single dollar that needs to come our way, you need to be looking at how those dollars manifest into results. $2, $3, whatever it is. Because we are the data change for the entire United States, because we are the worst from what it is that they say analytically when it comes down to crime per capita or murder per capita. So this woman is saying she needs some dollars to help change the trajectory of what's going on in our community. And if she's asking for something as simple as $300,000, we need to make sure we give it to her. So with that being said, Ms. Sombrero, please bring those projections to the table. Give us in writing, what it is that you need. And when these dollars come down the pipeline, I will personally fight, and I'm sure other members of the community. Anyway, this is not even a fight. We know what we need. These folks on this committee are ready to go. These folks are ready to make a change. You got to make sure that what you bring to the table shows them that they will make a change by making sure when they vote on those dollars.
I will absolutely do that. I will send you an email tomorrow. Or who do I send the email to?
Make sure you send it to the chairman too. He's most
Alderman
important.
Bacaro.
We all important on the committee, but I'm just saying we are.
I will do that.
That would be good. The only thing, and of course I got a text, which always helps me along, reminding me that when we're dealing with an outside company, it would have to go through an RFP process, that we can't directly guide money one way or another when it goes outside. Is that correct, Dr. Dan?
Yeah, that would be correct.
So we can't,
Well, you know what?
And
Let me talk to Hope about that. If you can find me the funds, I will talk to Hope and we will make magic happen. We will make something happen. We just need the two.
Well, I'm with you. I just and certainly Alderman Baz and myself are in agreement. And and my thoughts are, well, we could fix this in the budget process. But then I got a text going, be careful because you can't direct money without, when it comes outside the city.
Well, we can make it, and that's what I mean. It's just like we can.
But we can figure. We gotta work our way through this. This needs to be funded, and I agree. We just gotta, we need to sit down with Dr. Dan and I'm pretty sure you're committed to trying to help us figure this out, right, Dr. Dan?
Oh, I thought you were
talking. It's no doubt, as Alderman Bazzi said, that this is a significant issue, and we can't have enough domestic violence advocates and social workers. So we're supporting more on our end, and any avenues that we could get to have more outside help and more partners, we're in favor of, because we all know that this is a significant issue. And the people, as Alderman Bazzi said, who are committing these acts against their loved ones and intimate partners are doing it to random people in the streets as well, or to at least associates in the streets. So it's all connected in terms of violence.
And I just want to be clear real quick. There are a whole lot of folks who could do this work. I'm not advocating for the money to be spent because I believe we need to spend it on this particular issue. I'm advocating because I believe that there is a person in the position who will take these dollars and do something about it. We can spend this money all day and nothing gets done. Ms. Sombrero and her team of folks, I promise you, they will work and we will see some results. It's about the team of people that you got. You can spend money all day. We throw money at issues all day. I believe in this team.
Well, here, what, and again, Dr. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe through Ways and Means, we can give the money to the city attorney's office, and the city attorney's office can put an RFP out. And then, because ultimately it's going to fall through them anyway, or would we do that through public safety? fund, put in the budget funding in the amount of $500,000 or whatever to go to. But it would that be, if we did that, give that
Chair,
money?
if I may, I believe most of the, victim services should often go through the circuit attorney's office.
I'm so sorry.
Well,
That's
go ahead,
only
let's go.
if it's going through the prosecutor's office. That's only if like they're actually taking the case. Otherwise, it's just us. And she's one person, and we've been here for 25 years doing this work without any city funding, and we're just asking for some help. That's all. Sorry.
No, and
I think all of us really want to help make sure that you get the funding you need. But as there's again, just trying to maybe for expectations, there's so many, the process is a little more difficult. And, there's when tax dollars are at work, there are, it just becomes a little, I wish it was just as easy as just deciding that we would vote on it. I think all of us would absolutely be there for this.
there must be a process that we have. Why don't, I'll tell you what, because we still have Alderman Oldenburg in the Ryan and Clark Hubbard. Why don't everybody that wants to speak, why don't we just open up our mics? Because this is more of a roundtable discussion anyway. So if anybody wants to speak, why don't you just go ahead and turn your, because I know some people also left to go to the personnel meeting, but and so this might be us,
Well, so I'm gonna say real quick, like, yeah, we most certainly can throw dollars at it. Like we throw dollars at anything else. We literally just spent $82 million on a bunch of tractors and trailers and a bunch of other stuff that may or may not even be utilized because we don't even have enough employees for it. So when it comes down to some of the most, personal issues going on in our city, man, our folks are dying every day over stuff that they couldn't figure out how to articulate to somebody else when the domestic dispute. This stuff is ridiculous, y'all.
Oh no, I'm with you.
I know you are, Mr. Chairman. I just need to Alderwoman Kara Spencer. No, and I know you with us also. I'm not being combative or anything. I was just saying to say, I think with the ARPA funds, it ain't like she asking for $1 million or $2 million or $5 million. There's enough there, especially when it comes down to the data of what's going on in this city and how many issues we are having with domestic. Our domestic problems went up tremendously during COVID. God, man, people are hating each other. Just because in their house with each other all the time, like that, which is understandable. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to prosecute or do what's necessary to ensure that folks are protected who have gotten themselves in a situation where somebody is a little bit irate or become dangerous. So, with that being said, we got money to throw into it. I just want to make sure that we throw that out there. I don't want us to be.
I'm with you, and I think we need to figure out a way, and hopefully we can get Dr. Dan to help us figure a way. But it's also about the process, because if we do something and we don't do it through an RFP process, and again, I get prompting help through text, okay? Because I'm like you, I think, well, let's just do this. It sounds easy, and then I get text going, well, you can't. So what would happen if there was another group out there that felt, well, we didn't include them in the RFP process? It could be, and my thought process is, well, let's just do it, fix this in ways and means. And apparently that, I think we can do this, but I think it's about how we do it, the procedure. And I think at that, we're going to need the city attorney's office as well. Okay, Alderman Ryan had to go too. But I think it's just going to be about how we do it. Dr. Dan, what do you feel is your timing on when we can get together, maybe in your office, to sit down and talk about process, and maybe have someone, I know Sandra's with the city attorney's office, but you know, get with them and how we go about through either public safety. I mean, whether I can do it by resolution, I can do it by a board bill.
Yeah, well, I think immediately we could work through the existing resources and try to help with the issues that Ms. Zambrano sees with problem properties. As you indicated, to have an outside agency and pay them, we would not be able to, that's even if the money is allocated to that specifically for the city councilor's office, there would have to be an RFP and competitive process that would go out to select somebody. So,
but would we make the funds available through the city council? In other words, through Ways and Means, they would send the RFP out, but would we make the funds available, or would you say right now the CARES Act money, we could put it in there and send out through an RFP?
yeah, well, that would be my call. I would go to the city councilors for that decision on, budgetary decisions. I just say, as a matter of process, if the money was put into their budget for such thing, there would have to be a competitive bid process.
Right.
So if I believe in divine intervention, and I believe that things, like there's the thumbprint of God, right? Or the universe. And if you would help with finding the money, I will make sure that everything else is ironed out. I will figure out everything else. I just need the hope. I just need the hope that we can have funds for a social worker for victims of domestic violence, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, so Dr. Dan, when would you have time that we could meet? Just in your office with Sandra? And
yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't mind sitting in.
We can find some time to meet next week.
So, okay, if you guys could work that out, and oh yes, yeah, go ahead, just jump in.
Oh, I was just wondering, would this include the Crime Victim Center as well? Just so that we know what's going on with our program and whatnot.
I will call you, Hope, and let you know. No worries.
Thank you.
Because that, just looking because I got something in chat. That's okay. Some of the people left, but so Sandra, if you and Dr. Dan could get together next week, I would love to sit in.
And Dr. Isom, anytime, just, if you set up, if you just tell me what day and time works, I will be there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, is there anybody else on the committee that's still here even right now? That would want to speak on this. Okay, and I know part of the group left, but Dr. Dan, Hope, and Sandra, thank you guys for coming in and hanging out with us. I don't even know if I have enough people to actually adjourn the meeting. We might be here forever. No. So if anyone that's on the committee, if they would like to make a motion to adjourn, if not, I'm just going to make that motion myself. So, Madam Clerk, I know a lot of people had in the
I move we adjourn.
Okay, and I will second that. But again, thank you everyone for coming out. And Dr. Dan, I look forward to meeting with you and Sandra in your office next week. Anyway, God bless. Thank you all. The meeting's now adjourned.
Thank you.